Hello and welcome back to my podcast. If you're new here, I am Rebecca Allen, and if you've seen me before, hello and welcome back. I've got my cat with me today. She's been at home all day all alone, so she's now wanting love, so I'm sorry if she pops up now and again. She's called Diamond Jules. My 5-year-old named her. She's a very, very sweet thing, and she's still quite small. She's under a year still. Right, so today I'm going to talk to you about my pattern that I'm making. I have knit up a medium, a small, and I am just knitting up a size large. I'm then going to pop that on Ravelry and hopefully get some people that want to test knit it before I release the pattern. It's a vest pattern. It's knit from the bottom up. It's possibly a bit of an unusual construction. So when I first started out knitting, I did all my patterns were bottom up that I chose, and now I know it's a lot more popular to have top down. To kind of help with sizing, etc. It starts with the front bottom, and you knit the kind of twisted rib and then the kind of slit at the side, so you increase. And then once you've done the front and back, you actually start joining in the round for a few rounds, and then you split off for the armhole. And then you work upwards, and then you get to the neckband, and you kind of work that, and then you pick up stitches to finish off the neckband and the armholes. I don't know how easy the pattern's going to be to read. I hopefully easy, and when I get my Ravelry testers have tested that, they can give me feedback on that. I've added in video links, I've added in pictures, I've tried to add in everything physically possible to make it as easy to understand and read. I'm hoping it's kind of suitable for beginners to intermediate, dependent on, like, you can add a motif in if you'd like to add a motif into the front. It's been a labour of love. I'm obviously going to have knit up sort of 3 to 4 of the sizes of the vests, which they're not too long to knit. It's in a chunky weight yarn. I'm going to knit one up in Aran just to see how that compares. And they're on 6mm needles, but it does knit up fast. I think one vest is taking me a week, and that's a week of work and having kids to look after, so it's not taking me that long to do. So I'll show you them. I'll show you my I've got my cat with me, sorry. My small first. It has one of my motifs on from my collection, so this is my small. Let me go back a little bit, and this is actually from a ripped back or frogged jumper that I found at a boot sale. If you can see the yarn, it's kind of like a speckled navy blue yarn, and it has different colours in it. So it has the yellows, the reds, greens, a bit of orange in there, and that's why I thought this motif lends itself really well to it. In my vest pattern, the motifs are not included. That is part of the Retired Fisherman's motif collection, which will be going out at roughly a similar time. And if you're test knitting, you're obviously welcome to that. So yeah, the pattern shows you how to do it without a motif, and it shows you how to do it with a motif, and this is with a motif. And it talks about figuring out your size and how long you want it, and sort of at this point here where you're working in the round at your side seams, that's when you can kind of try it on and see what you think to the sizing. And then you kind of want to knit it up until it sits kind of under your arms, so those want to be sitting kind of there. The armhole starts quite wide, and once you've added your rib, twisted rib onto the armholes, it kind of takes it in a little bit. They're meant to be oversized. So this is a small. They're quite big oversized vests. They're meant to be chunky, they're meant to be big, they're meant to be oversized. I'll hopefully get some pictures of these on and like how I would style them. Yeah, so some kind of, I suppose, key parts of it is you've got the twisted rib bottom, and then when you go in the round, it kind of follows the twisted rib up into this kind of like side seam, which has like this twisted rib pattern on it. I've not weaved in my ends, that's why it looks a bit gappy at the side. And then at the top you've got this kind of plaited looking join, which I quite like. It stops it being so full and chunky at the side seam, and it gives it, I really like the pattern. I like that it shows that pattern. I think it looks quite nice and smart. And then the neckline is the twisted rib again, so you can see the twisted rib going round. and that's the same as at these. Sorry, you will see all my yarns, I've not weaved in anything yet. I will do that later when I've done my next one. So yeah, and the back is just kind of standard. I would say this small one I've done, it's quite long. Because I put the motif on, I needed that extra space, and I wanted to leave, if you can see, a little bit of a gap before the neckline. I didn't want to have my octopus's head being right up at the top. I also didn't want it to be right at the bottom, so I've kind of positioned it kind of slightly higher than the central. But that's my motif and small. And then my large isn't fully knitted up yet, so it's kind of still on my needles. I've just started binding off for my front. I've been looking at my pattern and doing some maths to try and figure it out, because I'm not actually going to knit up my extra large or extra small. There's also an XX, so like 2XL, and I'm not going to knit that up. Hopefully some of my test knits can knit that up, and I've sat and I've worked out my maths and it seems to figure. It's just whether the kind of the larger quantity or larger stitches at the side for the larger ones sit okay, and they're not too, the band's not too then wide on the shoulder. That's kind of the only thing, but I think if it is on my large, then I'll know. So I'm not putting a motif on this. So if you see this fabric, it's kind of like a white effect with speckles on. I don't know if I've got one of my bands in. Here we go. So it's Hayfield's Bonus Chunky Tweed Extra Value, 100%, machine washable, 100 grams, and it's a shade Storm Cloud. It is acrylic. It is, I think it's 96% and then 4% viscose, so completely synthetic. And that's kind of what the ball looks like before it's knit up. And then it gives this kind of like, I don't know, it reminds me of static. If you're old enough to remember when you get a static on a TV, it reminds me of that kind of like fuzzy effect. What I would say, and it does, I don't think it shows too much, but when you're knitting it, you can tell there are certain areas. I think you can see there a little bit. I don't know if it's going to show up on camera. See if I can find a better area where it's not like just there. It's got kind of not as many black bits, so it looks kind of nudie. It's like completely white at that area, so it's just like a nudie bit. So this is where I've got to. I'm on my front. I've just picked up for my right shoulder. I've done my left shoulder. I've got my neck on my stitch marker, and I'm gonna knit those the same as this, so it goes kind of up, so it sits like this. And then I do need to go back to my pattern and have a little figure, because I've got my medium and small sorted, but the rest I need to do some maths to figure out how far up I need the back to be, because obviously the back, as you can see on this one, needs to sit higher up than the front. So it's higher up on your back, and then your front gives you like a lower neckline, so it's not kind of all up on your neck. So yeah, that's the kind of the maths that I'm having to do at the moment. I've got these kind of needles that you can do on the round, and if I can find the end, you can join them together with this little kind of metal piece that screws in and out, screws off completely, and that's where you can add your needles into. I just put mine on here, and when I was knitting in the round, this was attached to my other wire, so that I had a massive long one that could go around all my stitches, because I had quite a few on my needle, like 200 odd stitches. So yeah, but yeah, these knit up really, really quickly. I'm enjoying it. I think they're looking really nice. It's been a bit of a labour of love. Some of the motifs, like the octopus one, I think that octopus one, it's like version 7 of me drawing an octopus. I hand drew one, really loved it, tried to put that onto a kind of gridded pattern, marked it, hated it. It looked so weird. I think you could tell it was an octopus, but it looked just distorted. It didn't sit right. So I went then I copied and pasted that, and then messed around with it a bit more, and still wasn't happy. Went to look back at my inspiration pictures, messed about a bit more, and then after sort of 7 goes of going back and forth, came up with that, and I'm happy with it. It does have a 2-toned colour change. The legs, the legs that are behind are slightly darker. You could do them all the same colour. I don't know if they'd blend in a bit too much, if you can see. So these ones are slightly darker. These are like the behind legs. At one point, he looked like he was like, and really angry. So he looks less angry now. I looked online to see if there were any motifs, and maybe I didn't look hard enough, but I couldn't seem to see very many octopus motifs to kind of help me out when I was getting the shape completely wrong. So that was like completely free-handed. And in that kind of the Retired Fisherman set, there is a lot more other motifs, different sizes, so that's quite a large one. But there's a lot more smaller motifs that you can add in. I just wanted for, I suppose, this large one, just to use no motif on it, so you can see how just the pattern looks. So when people are looking to possibly buy it, they've just got the flat pattern and they can see how it looks. And if they want to add motifs in, that's kind of up to you. You don't also have to add my motifs in. The pattern talks about if you found a motif you like and you want to add that on, how you would do that. Again, I've added videos to my YouTube to help with that. There's links in the pattern, there's pictures. I've just tried my best to make it as easy as possible so that kind of anyone can have a go at it and it kind of reads well. Yeah, so maybe not your traditional one, or maybe not how patterns are now being written. I've tested a load on Ravelry that have been top down, and I get that then you can start, and then you can, if you need to add more rows, you can add more rows. If you need to lengthen and shorten it, then you can. Whereas if you're doing it bottom up, when you started casting off the armhole, that is it. You can't really make it any longer. But what I would say, I suppose, as a positive for bottom up, if you're just trying it on, and you can put a lifeline all the way through, if you don't have long enough circle needles, you can then just put a lifeline through and try it on, and then you should be able to, when I would stand up and do it, but then just see where your armholes are and where you want to start off, and if you're ready or if you need it a little longer. I don't think necessarily because you're coming bottom up it means that it's not going to fit or you're going to be concerned about the size. Yes, it's harder to change, and I suppose you will have to be slightly more careful with the amount of yarn you've got. I think on my medium one, the first one that I made up, I ran out of the colour yarn for the main body, and I just found a similar grey and held it with the other yarn that I was using, and you can't tell, but you could potentially do these, so your ribbed armhole and neck hole in different colour. So I could have done it in orange, or we've got some different colours in here that I could have picked out to use these, or I could have just done it in a navy. So if you wanted it to stand out, a bit like when you do socks and the heel and the toe are in different colours, it might look nice. I would say possibly would look even better if you matched the bottom ribbed with those, so that would take a little bit more planning. I'm talking about if we run out of yarn and we're kind of like, oh no, I've got not enough yarn to do this, then you could do it in a different colour. But if you wanted to purposely do it in a different colour, matching that to those would look really nice to give it kind of an alternative kind of look. Yeah, so this is my pattern. It's going. Thank you very much for listening, and keep in touch and keep checking out my videos if you want to hear more of my ranting. Bye.